All right. Hi, everyone. I am Gwen Callahan, the co-director of the HP Lovecraft Film Festival in Cthulhu, and I'm joined by some of the filmmakers from Shorts Block 6 today. Um, Shorts Block 6, right? Right?
I
Yeah.
think
Yeah,
that's correct.
I think that's right. Okay. Sorry. Like, what day is it? Where am I? Who am I? We have Noah Hale, who did Howie's Flowers, and
Right.
he's here in Portland, Oregon. We have Quinn Bailey, who did Play It All Night Long, and he is in LA. And Clayton Orgles, who did Dissociation, and he is coming up to us from Western Australia. So how are you guys doing?
I'm doing pretty good, honestly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty good.
okay. um, so Noah and Quinn, we were lucky enough to have you with us in person at the festival in Portland. And Clayton, we're so sad that you weren't able to join us. But I'm really excited that we're having the opportunity to talk to you now about dissociation. And I'm going to start with you because I haven't talked to you before previously, so this is new. So dissociation is kind of a loose adaptation of the picture in the house. Can you tell us a little bit about how you adapted that and just a little insight into some of the changes that you made between the Lovecraft story and your screenplay?
Yeah. So with our film, we kind of had like two goals. So we wanted to appeal to Lovecraft fans who had already read the original story. And we also want to appeal to people who might be interested in watching the film who haven't read the original story. So we had to make a few changes to make that happen. Because Lovecraft's original story, it's kind of like a first-person perspective where he explains what's happening as the story goes along. So, for example, we had to make changes like when Lovecraft sets up the age of the old man, because in the original story, it's about like this cannibal who's extending his life unnaturally by eating people. When he sets up the age of the old man, the genealogist mentions in his like inner monologue that he noticed the old man mentioned the name of an old sea captain, and the genealogist mentions that name, like he notes it, because he saw the name in some very old genealogical data. So it's like this obscure name that he remembered. Now, we couldn't do that in the film because that was like his inner monologue. So we couldn't just have like a voice coming in from nowhere. It had to be more cinematic than that, more experiential. So our solution was to use an actual historical figure. That way, when the audience is watching the film, they hopefully recognize that historical figure, and then they understand that this guy is like really old. So we ended up using the character Breaker Morant from like the Bruce Beresford film, just because it's I'm Australian, so it's some Australian history that we've inserted in the film. So we've had to use a few techniques like that throughout the film to make it more understandable for like people who haven't read the original story. And yeah, so that was my approach to adapting it. So we've had to make these little changes here and there just to help with the flow of things so that it's a more enjoyable experience for the audience.
Nice. And the protagonist also is gender flipped to a young woman rather than a young man. So that made it for an interesting dynamic between the a young woman and an old man. And that I guess it's not really important that the genealogist is a man or a woman. So I enjoyed the liberation that you feel when you aren't tied to that for your
Yeah,
film. I just want to comment that some of the cinematography in your film is just gorgeous. A lot of
thank
those
you.
opening shots with the just those wide shots of the landscape and just like the makes me want to visit. Is that I assume that you filmed that in Australia.
Yeah, yeah. So the whole film was shot in Western Australia. That was shot that those opening shots with like all the rolling hills and everything. That was shot in my hometown, which is an hour west of sorry, east of Perth. So Perth is like the capital of Western Australia. So that was in like the wheat belt region where they grow all of the wheat for Australia. And yeah, so
Neat.
that's where we shot that material. Yeah.
That's just gorgeous. Yeah, so that kind of really puts us in that headspace where she's kind of, it seems like she's kind of in a dreamy headspace, and it's really nice that the sort of landscape reflects that. Did you find any difficulties in once you get into the house and it's kind of an enclosed space with the interactions between the two characters?
No, not really. I think the main problems with that particular location was modifying it to fit the film, just because the interior of the house that was located in the middle of the suburbs, so we had to print a very large matte painting to put outside the window to make it match the actual exteriors. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, it's mostly just location things rather than yeah.
Rather than like spatial logistics inside. That's the
Yeah.
first that I've heard of recently of filmmakers using matte paintings for things, and that's really exciting. Like
The
nobody,
second you said that, a part of my brain just became very, very happy.
yeah. That's amazing. I'm going to head over to talk to Noah about Howie's Flowers, but I'll circle back around. So no, Noah, Howie's Flowers is like the most adorable thing. All of our audiences have really enjoyed it. We get a lot of very positive response when we show it, and like a lot of people are very sympathetic with the deep one. And they're, you know, at the end where he's like, oh, everyone's like, oh. Can you tell us a
Good.
little bit about where this project came from? Because you're a film student.
Yeah. Well, this is a final project for a intro to stop motion animation class that was taught by oh, not Kelly Meyer. Um, gosh, I'm blanking on the name all of a sudden.
The other one.
Yeah. So she excellent teacher, and so we had to come up with a final project, and um she didn't want us to go on for it to go on too long. She only expected like 30 seconds to 45 seconds. I went a little bit further, and yeah, I just came up with the idea of Howie holding a bouquet of flowers, and he's at the beach, and the deep one comes out. So what happens there? So, and because I need to have at least one humanoid figure. Actually, she said human figure. I took it as humanoid, so that hence you have the deep one, which is humanoid. So yeah, I had to have at least one, at maximum two, characters in the story, and yeah, at least had to try to make it a story. You had a beginning, middle, and an end, some kind of action going on that illustrates your or displays your animation chops up to then. So
Okay. So we've had a couple of different people have told me their interpretation. There's been a couple different versions of the story because there's no dialogue. It's just all what you see on screen. And one version was that Lovecraft was on a meeting his blind date at the beach, and that when the deep one comes out and he sees that that's his blind date, he freaks out and leaves and runs away. But then the other interpretation, which I personally had in mind when I watched it, was that Howard had just been rejected and was going to the beach to be sad, and then the deep one sees him and comes out of the water and was like, I'm here, and then the deep one in turn is rejected and goes back into the water. So
yeah,
which one did you have, one of those narratives in mind when you created it?
it's entirely the latter of the two. Yes, he is come to the beach because he's just been rejected. Bouquet of flowers, picture the woman he wanted to be with, and so now he's at the beach looking at the moon, being kind of, well, lonely. I know it's kind of cliche to for have someone look up at the moon, but it's like you want to try to use something to get across a certain kind of message. So and yeah, the deep one is in turn rejected because Howie just there's something he just doesn't understand or is lacking of understanding, and that's like relating to someone else, and that this person, instead of a monster I mean, yeah, to him, it's a monster, but it still may be a being with wants, dreams, feelings.
Nice. I really enjoy how you've packed all of that story into like a, less than 2 minute short film with using it's paper, right? Like
Yeah,
cut paper.
just paper, watercolor paper actually, so we can, paint on it in that way. I understand the that there may be other interpretations of it. That's fine. That's great if someone else can read into it, just long as, hopefully the emotion gets across. And actually I know you post the reviews by what was his name?
So a couple different people have made reviews. So there's been some written reviews on the scariest things, and then just recently, Stephen Clements in Mobile. I think he's actually from Pensacola, but he saw a lot of these short films at our Mobile, Alabama festival, and made a couple of. Well, he's making a series of 4 videos reviewing everything he saw, and I think he's up to 2. But I think he reviewed your film in the first part, maybe.
He did, and I definitely understood that he didn't see it. He tried. I guess he tried not to see it or review it by what the description was read, but what he saw.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a really good test of I think if an animator is trying to get something across. It's not the exact story because didn't seem like enough time, but I understood his point of like, well, I have to tell you what I see rather than what is told to me. So
right. Yeah. And I feel like as an artist, once you release something out into the wild, it's kind of up to the audience to decide how they're going to receive it. And that's kind of the magic of any kinds of art. But with film, it leads to discussions like this. So it's a great thing. Thank you. I'm going to move over to Quinn and let's talk about Play It All Night Long. So this is sort of a very modern take on cosmic horror and clearly very influenced by Lovecraft. And the angle of coming at it through music is an interesting one. Like, how did you, what inspired you to kind of do the cosmic horror angle from a musical perspective?
Well, actually, there was a couple things, but I think the real sort of heart of this film is that it came about sort of during the pandemic when I was sort of coming through this very bad break of imposter syndrome. And sort of as I was pulling out of it, like I sort of connected a lot of the feelings I'd had at that point to cosmic horror. Like there's a way these feelings sort of start, feel parasitic. Like it's not necessarily like feels like your own thoughts. It feels like something isn't yours kind of pushing itself into you. And I really like that idea of the internal cosmic horror. And I was searching for a place to sort of put that as an idea. And then I think the idea of music and inspiration and sort of the idea of inspiration itself as a form of cosmic horror, that we kind of don't really know where our own inspirations come from sometimes, that we can't really always follow our own like thought processes. I really love that as an idea of cosmic horror. And then I think from that, it's just my own interest in like, I grew up listening to a lot of like punk and new wave music. I grew up on my parents' like Clash and Ramones tapes. So I took like the music I was like passionate about and I knew how to make. And I was like, I like cosmic horror. I like punk. Let's just put them together. Let's make a film that combines all of my interests.
Nice. With the music in your film, is it original music? Where did that come from?
It's all original music. So a lot of it was, especially the songs themselves you hear in the film, were written in pre-production, because when I work on my films, I learned music sort of before I started making film. And to this day, I still kind of, when I go into a script, I always have a lot of really specific ideas in terms of what I want for music. So I had a lot of the melodies written down. I had all the songs completely written out before we went to production, because like my attitude was like, if I have like very specific idea of like the tone of the music I want in this in my head, it'll help me make it much clearer to my casting crew, like, this is kind of the tone I want for this film. So in a sense, it was kind of like the process of like coming up with the music for this that really like set the tone and really helped me develop most of the film. But yeah, it's all original music.
Interesting. That's really cool. Directors often talk about having a playlist when they're editing, or they give a playlist to their editor because they want them to understand what the vibe is, or have their cast and crew listen to a thing, but they're usually not like composed already. So that's really cool.
Well, I still had a playlist. Like, it was a lot of it was more ideas in my head. I still very much had a playlist, or it was just like a lot of like 70s punk, a lot of like early doom metal stuff like Black Sabbath, like definitely a lot of sort of prog rock in there. A lot of the Silent Hill soundtracks as well, because that was like very important for like creating like the very eerie soundscape relating to the siphon.
Nice. Can you talk about the casting for your characters a little bit? Like, how did you find those two actors? They were great. They worked really well together, and I liked the sort of the contrast between the sort of very loose, like living the rock star life lead man, and then the very matter of fact counterpart to him.
Well, I think from the start, like, I went to my casting director, Matt, and he was the guy who honestly put a lot of that together. I think when I went into this process, I had been talking to Matt for quite a while. I sort of explained, well, here's sort of how I see the characters, and I honestly just put my trust in Matt to be like, here's sort of the emotional kind of things I needed. Like for Deacon, I needed somebody who's like, who could have that like sort of rock star charisma, but could also have like the vulnerability beneath it, and not just that, make them the same thing. Or like for Allie, I needed someone to like work off of him, someone to like fill in the rest of the areas that he himself isn't quite filling in. And I went to Matt with that, and he came back with Rodney and Christina and the rest of our cast right away. They were the first people I ever auditioned for the role, because he sent me a call and was like, hey, I have people for your film. Do you want to talk to them tomorrow? I said, sure. And the next day I auditioned them, and I kind of just instantly knew that was like, oh, these people are perfect. I need them. I need these people.
Nice. Has that ever happened to you before? I mean, it seems like
Never.
usually like
Never. This is the first time where I got all my like first choice picks for the cast.
that's amazing. I guess that casting director really got the vibe of the film and everything.
I mean, that's the best you can ask for, right? Like, you get good collaborators. That's how a film happens. It's like, there's a lot of stuff. There's so much in this film, like the effects, the casting, like, that I cannot take credit for. That was like what my collaborators brought to the table. And I immediately looked at it and was like, oh, that's a better idea than I would have ever been able to come up with.
So let me ask you, the scene with the hand, like, the knuckle sounds. Was that done with stop motion?
Yes, it was. So what happened was Michael Donetz, our effects director, basically what he did was he took Rodney's arm, cast it completely from scratch, and built this insanely detailed replica. And then on the final day of filming, we set like an hour aside for this. And what we did was we just went for an hour, and we painstakingly used stop motion animation to do every single break, finger by finger, bone by bone. And it was this painstaking process, but it turned out so incredible. And I was so glad that the effects team and my cinematography team were able to work together and pull it off the way we could.
It's not Noah is nodding his head as he understands the painstaking nature of the stop motion. You're muted, Noah.
The need for patience.
I was gonna say we did all that for like less than a second of footage. You made 2 minutes. I have nothing on you.
Oh, thanks. I want to
You
be
have more
doing,
patience than I do.
I want to be doing what you're doing. I want not just the animation. I want to make another film, live action thing. So my head's up. My head definitely off to both of you guys for your work.
Absolutely.
Quinn, with the with Deacon kind of coming to this realization that like maybe my music is not my music, and maybe it's something else that tells me or told me that has like wormed its way in and is speaking through me, is that that's clearly your uh metaphor for the imposter syndrome that you were going through, I think. But do you feel like that is also applicable to a wider array of themes?
I think so, yeah. I think the way I approached it is like, well, it is sort of still based on my personal experiences, but I like it when people bring that to my films. I think the way I approached it was that the siphon is that, but the siphon is also, the siphon means a lot of things. One of the other things for me was like the idea of sort of like inspiration as like a very destructive thing. Because like, you know, I've gone through film school, I've seen that. I've seen a lot of like people, even like close friends, kind of like destroy themselves and like pursuing like their art, specifically like this perfection. So I think part of it was bringing this the idea of like that the sort of inspirational and creative urge can be something that kind of destroys you. That like that like the process of like creating a work of art is in a lot of ways like really painstaking and even painful. And I think for me the siphon kind of represents like not just imposter syndrome, but sort of like depression and burnout and sort of all sort of the darker sides of like this artistic process sort of given a voice. That it is sort of the voice of like the things that weigh you down when you kind of choose to make this your path.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And it's the also the desire for fame and recognition and giving into it instead of trying to find your own authentic voice.
Yeah, that's what it feeds on. That's what I wrote into the script, that essentially like it feeds on like wasted potential. It feeds on like the artwork and like the creative work that could have happened but doesn't because of the self-destructive urges it puts there in the first place. It's creating its own food.
Interesting. Okay. Thank you. Clayton, I'm gonna come back to you for a last round of questions. So with dissociation, loose adaptation of the picture in the house, and I think at the end we get a sense of the genealogist is maybe a descendant of the older gentleman. Is that's kind of my interpretation, and I'm wondering if that's correct or if that was your intent.
That's it's totally valid interpretation of the story. So my initial thinking was that at the start of the film with the woman in the white dress, she was like the only person in his life who had the emotional maturity to actually like show an okay reaction to the things he was talking about. So his backstory is basically that that we created was that he had these beliefs that he could extend his life unnaturally using cannibalism, and he wanted to cut people up, etc. And when he told these things to like his friends, family, colleagues, they kind of shunned him, and this kind of like pushed him to like the edge of society where he'd isolate himself. But she was like the woman in the white dress was the only person who showed emotional maturity when he was discussing these things. Like she could tell that it was important to him, even though she was grossed out by it. And he kind of like blew this up in his head as her like actually endorsing him. And that's what led to him like controlling her and making her actually do the acts, because he thought that she'd like it. But then towards the end of that scene, it turns out that she's freaked out by it and she fell off the cliff. So basically the idea was, by casting the same actor in both roles, when he sees the genealogist, he sees someone who looks exactly like the one person who showed emotional maturity towards him. And he I guess it just reminds him of her. And
Okay.
he really because he's been isolated for like 100 years, and he's like blown up in his head all this trauma from people shunning him and pushing him out to the edge of society. This like one person who looks just like the only person is kind of like it's like the motivation for him being nice to her. And that's what kind of leads us into the story, because instead of him like killing her and eating her immediately, he lets her stick around because he wants to kind of be friends with her, maybe even court her, even though there's a giant age difference. Yeah, and that's kind of like the driving force of why he sticks around and tries to help her at first.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. I didn't make the connection between the relationship with the woman in the white dress before, but now I see that more clearly. Interesting. Thank you for that insight. That's amazing. Um, this is why we love the film, like talking to the filmmakers. And you guys are what makes this a festival, not only with your films, but with the, you know, with the your presence and being here with us. It's so cool. For each of you, I have a question about like clearly you're Lovecraft fans, and I always wonder, like, is that the main genre that you work in, is cosmic horror and Lovecraftian themes, or do you work in other genres as well? And this is a lot of questions, sorry. And if you have any plans to make any more cosmic horror films.
So the first horror film I ever saw was actually an adaptation of Color Out of Space. It was The Curse from 1987. And I think that's what sparked my fascination with the horror genre. And also, I guess you could kind of refer to 13 Ghosts as well as cosmic horror in a way, but it's kind of something completely different. Anyway, so those two films are like the main influences for my filmmaking, and because they were like the first two horror films I saw. And yeah, I'm definitely more interested in doing more horror films after this one. I'm in addition to Lovecraft, I'm also a big fan of Junji Ito, so I want to incorporate more body horror into my work. And yeah.
Nice. Have you seen Uzumaki?
Yeah, I've read the manga, but I haven't watched the
Okay.
new anime yet. Yeah.
Oh,
I have a
okay.
copy over on my shelf. I have way too many Junji Ito books on my shelf right now.
Okay. Yeah, the film doesn't exactly follow the manga, but I think it captures the feeling of it, and a lot of the visuals in the film are just like absolutely stunning. So I recommend it. Noah, same question for you. I know that yours just starting out, but do you have plans to make any more Lovecraftian or cosmic horror films?
Yeah, I do, but not actually stop motion. I'd like to among the things I want to make a short film, and one idea I had for that I've written a short script for was a version of the Strange High House in the Mist.
Mm.
So I really like the idea of that, of this, you know, strange person out on a doorway to whatever. And so yeah, I that's what I would be working on next, I guess.
Okay.
Although I don't know, I got a bunch of ideas for things I want to do, as I'm sure both Clayton and Quinn do as well. But you got to choose one. So
Nice. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing what you come up with.
thanks.
Quinn, how about you?
I mean, absolutely. I love all things horror, but like cosmic horror was one of my big gateways into horror. Like one of the reasons I got into horror was like through reading books, and a lot of those early ones were, you know, reading Lovecraft and reading Chambers and reading Clive Barker when I was way too young to be reading Clive Barker. But that's always like a big thread as for me loving horror. And like while I do a lot of stuff in like different genres, I still end up there usually is in stuff I do always at least a little bit of a cosmic horror element. And it's just one of the genres that I just gravitate towards the most because I think it's one of the ones with just the most interesting possibilities. I think it's the one where you can really, really get weird and high concept with like the ideas of your horror stories. And I mean, I have like 3 scripts right now that are all cosmic horror in some way. The next thing I'm working on is kind of more of like a ghost story. So that's very old school, but like still kind of influenced by a lot of people sort of sharing the same tradition as Lovecraft was. So, I mean, in a sense, yeah, it's such a key part of like why I fell in love with horror that I am absolutely going to go back at some point.
Nice. That's amazing. So I think we're gonna wrap up, but like I would like for each of you to let our audience know where they can find you, follow you on the internet, and keep an eye out for all these future cosmic horror projects. Clayton, I'm gonna start with you.
So you can just go to my website, claytonaugles.com. And I also post my films on YouTube just under Clayton Augles.
Noah.
I don't have a website yet, but I've got a Vimeo account, and I've got a bunch of stuff up on that. So that'd be what is it? Vimeo.com/Noah N. Hale.
Cool. Quinn.
I have a website, qjtbailey.weebly.com. I also have all my stuff on YouTube. You can find it there at Quentin Bailey. And I am on social media. I am sporadically on Instagram, and I am on Twitter and Blue Sky way too much under QJT Bailey at basically all of those sites. So that's where you can find me.
Fantastic. Thank you again for joining me and letting me ask you all these questions about your films. And I hope that you have some inspiration after watching the other films in the festival to make some more amazing cosmic horror with your Clayton Orgel stamp and your Noah Hale stamp and your Quinn Bailey stamp on them. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great to talk with you guys.
Pleasure.
And for our audience, go watch the next thing, and we'll be back with another Q&A later. And just remember, all the content stays up till December 5th, so pace yourself and enjoy everything. Okay. All right. Bye, everyone.